At the beginning of 1980, Todmorden was a little-known West Yorkshire mill town. But before the year's end, the town would be associated with one of the stranger stories in British UFO history.
It was something you only read about or seen on television. And suddenly, it's there. If you think of a double-decker bus sideways, that's how big it was.
And he wasn't the sort of person that would suddenly say something, you know, that hadn't happened. So I believed him.
I felt quite safe in the police car. Now if somebody got out of it, I'd be bloody scared.
The story of a young Yorkshire police officer's sighting of an unidentified object became headline news.
I believe Alan Godfrey is telling the truth. If he's lying, he deserves an Oscar.
Almost 30 years later, his experience has become part of UFO folklore.
I've been a journalist for 50 years and covered quite a few rather strange stories. But the Alan Godfrey story is undoubtedly the most astonishing thing I ever covered.
In 1980, Alan Godfrey had been a police officer in the Todmorden area for 6 years. On the night of the 28th of November, he claims to have witnessed something extraordinary.
We got radio messages from our control room that people were reporting seeing a small herd of cows roaming around a local council estate. And as I'm going up Burnley Road, I could see in the distance, about 500-600 yards up the road, something that had skidded. I thought it was a staff bus that had skidded across the road for some reason. Whatever it was, I decided to go and investigate. So I'm driving towards this object, and I got within about 20 yards, and there it was. An object, nuts and bolts, hovering above the road surface. It was shaped in a diamond shape, and the bottom flange was rotating. The top half appeared to be stationary. I didn't know what to do. I mean, what would you do? Well, if it was you, you'd probably ring the police up. But in my case, I'm already there, so I thought I'd radio our control room.
Alpha Foxtrot 203 control.
Now with two radios, we've got a VHF, which is the car radio, and UHF, which is the personal radio. I tried both, and none of them had worked.
Come control.
It was eerily silent. That really does stick in my mind, that was really eerily silent. And for some reason, I don't know why, I picked my clipboard up and started to draw it. I made a quick sketch. So it's there. Rather than my head, it's there, it's black and white.
Although he'd made a sketch, Alan Godfrey's story would ultimately centre around what happened next.
Now it's black and white. And I'm at the other side of it, driving. Quick glance at mirror, it's not there. I got out of the car. The road surface was whirlpool dry, like a spinning object would make, you know, with all these leaves and branches and what have you. You could see an area of road surface that wasn't like the other. The others were wet, this was dry.
Unsure of what had happened to him, PC Godfrey drove straight back to the police station in Todmorden.
When Alan came into the police station, he was very agitated.
I says to him, you'll never guess what I've just seen, you know. You won't believe what I've just seen.
At first, you know, you think he's totally outrageous, you know, but I've no reason to doubt him. I mean, I've known him for a long time, and we know each other really well, and I've no reason to doubt what he said.
But the night still had one more surprise left. As Alan Godfrey ended his shift, he noticed something else he couldn't explain.
There was approximately 30-35 minutes missing that couldn't be accounted for. For me leaving the police station to coming back. To me, I'd only been away 15 minutes. But I hadn't, I'd been away approximately 45-50 minutes.
On the night of the 28th of November 1980, Police Constable Alan Godfrey was driving through the Pennine town of Todmorden when he witnessed a strange object in the road.
It for something you've only read about or seen on television. And suddenly, it's there, in front of you. It was just something out of a science fiction film. It was totally unbelievable.
P.C. Godfrey had no rational explanation for what he'd seen, or for what he discovered later.
I had this irritating itch on my foot. The boot on my left foot was split. If that's the sole of the, it was split that way. I've no idea why they were split, but when I took it off, I removed my sock, and it was on the instep of my foot, and it was a round circle like that, red. And it was very, very itchy. It wasn't sore, but it was very, very itchy.
At work the following day, Alan Godfrey received some surprising news. He hadn't been the only officer who claimed to have seen something strange the previous night.
I came on duty, and there was an inspector waiting to see me. I went into the inspector's office, and he then informed me that I wasn't alone, that 3 police officers in Halifax, in fact, had some sort of an encounter the same night. And he was putting a report together, and he wanted a statement of me. Coming out the inspector's office thinking, yeah, right on.
It was Alan Godfrey's story which caught the attention of both the local press and UFO investigators, many of whom descended on Todmorden in the wake of the sighting. In 1980, Jenny Randalls headed British UFO investigation group U.F.O. She was born near Todmorden and has written about British UFO sightings for over 35 years.
The Alan Godfrey experience, when it happened, came at the culmination of a whole series of events during the preceding 3 or 4 months that had been occurring in and around that area. They'd been getting stranger and stranger.
The Pennines are the backbone of the United Kingdom. The area stretches from the Scottish borders to the Derbyshire Peaks, a distance of 250 miles. Throughout the 1970s, there have been dozens of reports of objects in the sky over Yorkshire and Lancashire. So numerous were the sightings, the area earned itself the name U.F.O. Alley. John Sheard was a Yorkshire-based journalist reporting for both the local and national press.
This was a time when the whole nation was obsessed with UFO stories. We had reports almost every day up here, particularly in the Pennines, but also throughout the country and, in fact, throughout the world.
The late 1970s and early 80s were the heyday of UFO mania. The release of films like Star Wars and Close Encounters coincided with the doubling of reports of UFO sightings in Britain. For the time being, news of Alan Godfrey's close encounter had stayed within Todmorden, but it hadn't escaped the attentions of a group of UFO investigators led by Jenny Randalls.
When I first met Alan, he struck me immediately as being a very typical, no-nonsense Yorkshire bobby. He would not have reported something like this unless he was absolutely sure in his own mind that it was real.
Although there was little physical evidence to support his claims, Alan Godfrey did have a damaged boot.
There was a split across the bottom of his boot. There's no question at all that that happened because we were able to immediately photograph it and it was real.
There was also the sketch made at the time of the sighting.
You just have to try and make a value judgment when you put all the evidence together, what you believe about the credibility of the witness, what the sincerity of the witness's story is, how it holds together again and again over the years.
But for Andy Roberts, who has researched hundreds of British UFO sightings, the origin of what P.C. Godfrey witnessed is relatively straightforward.
My personal belief is that he went into some form of altered state of consciousness, whether you call it a trance or something like that. Something triggered that. In his narratives, when he's described what he saw, he always says when he was driving up to it, he thought it was a bus. Now, it's possible that was the point when he slipped into this altered state of consciousness. When he got near it, he was seeing it as a UFO. Interestingly, he describes it as having 2 rows of windows, quite like a bus, actually. And it was on the main road near a bus stop. So it's possible he saw a bus delivering mill workers or picking mill workers up, and in his altered state of consciousness, it had transformed into a UFO.
This object I saw was hovering off the ground, had no wheels. It was of a metallic colour, and it had black panelling and dark windows. And it certainly wasn't a bus. I know the difference between a bus and what I saw that night.